The Habsburg family, also known as the House of Habsburg, who bore their name after the Habsburg Castle, a fortress built in the 1020s AD in present-day Switzerland, was the monarch of Austria and later the Austro-Hungarian Empire. The international banking family and owners of the Bank of England, the Rothschilds, hated the Habsburgs and desired dethroning the monarch. Despite this, many Ashkenazim allies of the Rothschilds gained a foothold in Austrian media and throughout the Yugoslavian lands, which consisted of primarily newspapers back in the early 20th century. The Rothschilds, who more than anyone else were responsible for the American Revolution, the French Revolution, and Napoleonic Wars, utilized their media connections to intensify hatred and warfare between Serbia and Austria. This is an example of common divide and conquer techniques in continual use in today's America. As a side note, later on, the Rothschilds would further be the primary instigators and financial funders of the Armenian genocide, wiping out the Christians in the world's first Christian country, World War II, and the Greek genocide, not to mention more recent issues. Give an example of how racist Europeans and people in general were back in the early 20th century. Franz Ferdinand and his wife were hated by many people in the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. Franz Ferdinand was heir to the throne. He was hated by everyone in his own family as well. But he himself, in turn, hated the Hungarians. He hated the Serbs and called them pigs. He declared the Slavs less than human, and he was a Catholic, so he especially hated the Jews and the Jesuits of the time. What happened on the day of June 28th between Ferdinand and Princip was one member of the Black Hand, another member beside Princip, attempted throwing a grenade in Ferdinand's car where he was riding with his wife in the back. Rumors are he deflected it with his arm. It's either that or the grenade hit the side of the car. But either way, it rolled underneath the fourth car in the motorcade and blew up and seriously injured these people. It was at this point Ferdinand left his planned route and protection to go visit these people in the hospital against the advice of his bodyguards. So anyhow, Princip, who missed his first opportunity, was now able to relocate later on and run right up to the side of the car and lick off two shots, bam, bam, hitting each Ferdinand and his wife in the head, killing them both. Black Hand Society was a secret society dedicated to an independent Serbia that would include Bosnia. Now here is where some attempt forming a New World Order connection with the secret society of the Black Hand, but this was not the big Rothschild ordering or paying off Princip to act. It was simply the media outlets in those countries, particularly Austria, where they drove strong anti-Serbian propaganda into the minds of the populace. This alliance of international bankers and medias have been the direct cause of every war since the French Revolution, as we mentioned, possibly dating further back to the 1670 English Civil War, which in turn caused the King Philip's War in Plymouth, Massachusetts, and its surrounding neighbors, including Boston, between the Pilgrims and the Native Americans. This was where England had broken away from the Vatican, and they allowed exiles back into the country. And within only half a century, they captured and privatized the British National Bank. Although the Austrian king had no love for his nephew Franz Ferdinand, he felt capitulated to react to the Serbian threat and offered them unthinkable peace terms to agree to. Hence, when the Serbs failed to comply, Russia mobilized its military forces in defense of Serbia, which had Austria begging Germany for their support, and eventually the fighting would begin, and the Great War, soon to be known as World War I, had commenced. Early on in the war, Russia was defeating the Austro-Hungarian forces. but eventually the Austro-Hungarians halted their advance. Next, it was the Germans' chance to try their luck on Russia, and the Russians were immediately destroyed and driven all the way back to Moscow, where they'd be attacked on the home front by the once Jewish exiles, and eventually the 287 Jews known as the Bolsheviks would usurp the monarch's throne and become the new government as they implemented their new government of communism upon the Christians. Immediately, 200,000 church clergy were men, all massacred throughout the lands and crucified throughout the lands of Russia. Tens of millions would soon follow them in the
Princip himself
afterlife.
wasn't exactly a hardcore Serb. Princip trusted and liked both Bosnian Muslims and Bosnian Croats. Yes, he obtained his gun from extremist Serb extreme nationalists in Belgrade, but the Austrian media labeled him nothing but a Serb fighting for Serbia, and this is not exactly true. Princip desired representing all of Bosnia, but Serbia was a more hated enemy and a better excuse to launch warfare for Austria. Indeed, Princip and his motives were twisted by the Austrian newspapers. Demon Fruit Libraries will soon make a nice documentary on the 1906 Russian Revolution leading up to asylum offered in Germany, and then the 1917 Bolshevik takeover, which communism began. And it will travel a few decades after that. It's going to be jam-packed with information, much of which Americans know little about. So prepare for that documentary coming soon.